Welcome, welcome, everybody. Come on in, come on in. I'm so excited to see your faces, especially that little tiny face in Valerie's square. Thank you, Valerie, for showing us the baby. So beautiful. I'm so excited that you all are here. As we are waiting on folks to come on in, you are experiencing the monthly Midday Cafe hosted by the IEA Great Lakes Region chapter of the International Enneagram Association. And although our name is the Great Lakes Region, our street name is Anywhere Near a Lake. So you don't have to be in the Great Lakes to be a part of our chapter. You can be anywhere near a lake, and you're in. So we are excited to be with y'all. I'm going to share a couple of announcements. My name is Danielle Fanfair. I have the privilege of serving as co-president along with my friend-tor, Clare Loughrige. We are having a great time exploring and leveraging the wisdom and the grace and the compassion that the Enneagram helps us to discover on a regular and routine basis. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to share my screen because I have some announcements that I want to share with you all. So let me get my screen together. The first thing I want you to do is, if you are not already following our Facebook page, please go to the Enneagram Great Lakes Facebook page and follow us so that we can get you up to date on all of the updated announcements. We're going to be hosting more midday cafes, more virtual events, maybe some in-person events, coming up. And so we want you to be in the know. We also have a YouTube channel so that if you love what you hear during these midday cafes that happen every third Wednesday of the month, and you're not able to make the live experience, you can always go to our YouTube channel. This is also a great way to share with friends and family that you want to introduce the Enneagram to those people. It's a great way to gently begin to introduce the concepts and the myriad of ways that the Enneagram helps to enrich our experience. We also have a newsletter that comes out every month. And that newsletter keeps you up to date on all of the opportunities, not only to learn via Midday Cafe, also all of our accreditation certifications. So if you want to learn more about the Enneagram in a more organized setting that gets you towards professional certification so that you can begin to teach it and use it as an Enneagram professional, there's so many opportunities to do that. One of them is the Motions of the Soul training that is hosted by our very own Reverend Clare Loughrige and her husband, Scott. And it is an amazing training where you get to really work with the harmony triads, which is a transformative way of understanding personality. They've also created a school of spiritual direction, which I'm excited to serve on the faculty of. And so I will drop all of these links in our chat so that you can begin to think about what evolving and expanding your Enneagram journey looks like. I want to also share with you all that there are several opportunities to learn from some of our board members, including myself. I'm an Enneagram, internationally accredited Enneagram teacher and have a professional program for training. And I actually have two models. One is how to teach the Enneagram. And the second one is how to teach the Enneagram through the lens of DEI. So I'll drop that link in there as well. And lastly, our President Emeritus, Dr. Jerry Wagner, has Enneagram Spectrum training as well. I've taken this training. It's amazing. It's really opened my eyes from a deeply psychological standpoint. And so it's been really helpful in helping to coach clients and organizations as well. And then lastly, our guest, who is an amazing thought leader, an amazing teacher, has a beautiful website where you can go and learn more about what she's doing, how she's teaching, her unique lens. I'm sorry, I'm going backwards. Here, let me go forward. Transforming human ecosystems with the evolving Enneagram. And so our lovely guest will be teaching us today, but I'll also drop in the chat links for how to connect with her and learn more from her. So look in the chat for all the links. I'm about to drop them now. And I'm going to throw it over to our co-president, Clare, for a beginning practice and to get us going. Thank y'all so much for being with us.
Thanks, Danielle. You are awesome. Can we all just give Danielle a big thank you for just, she keeps us in the know and all the places we can go. And we could write a song about that if we wanted to, because we're famous for that here in this chapter.
We should. we need an opening theme song like a 90s sitcom. So we're gonna work on that.
All right. We're looking at Lindsay Marks too. She's on our board. She's the music person. She can help us with that, I guarantee. And so welcome everyone. We are so grateful to have you here with us and welcoming this beautiful accredited Enneagram professional and founder of the Evolving Enneagram, Nhien Vuong. And so, I remember meeting Nhien in Chris and Felina Hewertz's kitchen. And it was after a retreat, and they said, you have got to meet Nhien. She's brilliant. And so, and then if you have read anything about Nhien, you know that she is not only a reverend, but she is a lawyer and graduated from Stanford with her law degree. And so she has quite a wide breadth of experience. And we love that she has not only served as a lawyer, but then, she brought that work into spirituality. And so she is a Unitarian minister. And, I felt really inspired this morning as I was thinking about Nhien and her beautiful, compassionate presence. And I started to think about my faith tradition and the person who guides my soul when I'm out of sorts. And that's the person of Jesus. And there was a lawyer that came to Jesus and said, what is the most important law? And I have to tell you, I don't call myself a Christian in too many settings because I've seen so many misuses of that term that become very religious and legalistic and judgmental and punitive and all of those things that, I just like to name the person of Christ that talked to a lawyer who said, what's the most important law? And the law said, well, it all hangs on this, right? And this beautiful invitation to love vertically and horizontally, that we cannot love if we are stuck in laws. We cannot love if we use the law to condemn rather than to open people to what is more true, and that is love. I worked with a person this week who was going through a divorce and a domestic violence situation. And we did a practice of radical compassion. And both of us really needed to do that practice because many times when you're talking about love, you say, hey, I have a story of love that would keep anybody from ever wanting to love anybody again, to even take the chance of loving anybody again. And but this idea of radical compassion, and if you've never practiced that, you may want to take a look at it. Tara Brock has been a great teacher for me on the journey in that practice. But I thought anybody who signed on today was not afraid to let Nhien unpack evolving love, which means we've got to keep growing up. We've got to keep transforming and seeing new ways of loving our Creator. And, as I name Christ, I don't know what you name, and then loving our neighbor as ourselves in a way that we make this world a place that is safe and held and a place of belonging. And so if you know good object relations and psychology, you want to study under people who are paying attention to you being safe. That's the head space. That you belong, that's the heart space, and that you are held, that's the gut space. And so we've brought someone here that we feel like does that masterfully. And so can we just take a breath before we receive Nhien? You may follow her in her professional career or her spiritual career, or maybe you name yourself as I did today. But we are very different on this call, and we want to welcome one another, and we want to say you belong here, and that we want to open to the work of love in our midst. So let's do that together if we could. Finding a way that is a good way for you to practice. For me, it's feet flat on the ground. And not just thinking about my feet, but feeling my feet. And then realizing that I am here and I'm okay. And so maybe you want to take a breath and just feel your feet on the ground. And maybe you want to say something like, I'm here and I'm okay here. And then if there's anything between you and being okay right now, just see if you can set that aside for these moments with a safe community where you can be held and belong and safe. And just follow your breath in and down. Notice how you're breathing. Don't try to change it right now, but just notice without judgment. Following your breath in and down, up and out. And then I'm going to invite you to breathe right into your heart space. Just imagining bringing your breath right into the heart region. And in this moment, remembering whether it's a pet or a person or an experience that let your heart come alive. A person or a place or an animal that when you breathed, you felt gratitude. And then let's breathe that person, place, or creature right into the center of our chest. And let those grateful feelings expand. And then just know at any time during this conversation, you can return to that place where you feel that gratitude, where your heart space is open. If there are any disorienting or difficult thoughts that try to hijack you from being here, you can return to the space. Anytime your body is triggered, you feel something happening that's disorienting, something that makes you feel not okay, you can return right to this space. And with that, I want to welcome my friend Nhien into my heart space. And I was allowing you to be the person in this moment of gratitude. And the way I watched you with your friend, that's living in the midst of war, and you found a way to help. I brought you here because I see you as not just an advocate in justice, but an accomplice in justice issues. And so I welcome you and I'm grateful for you today.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Claire. What a beautiful, and I would say also brilliant introduction. I was really touched by your words and by that shift from, you know, the man-made laws into sort of the ultimate spiritual law, which I would say is the law of love, as you named, the law of love. And so what a perfect segue into our exploration today. Before I go further, I realized I should have a point of clarity in that I am a unity minister and not a Unitarian minister. I just want to, for the record, that's the lawyer in me that's like, for the record. So I do want to point that out. But even as I'm pointing it out, what struck me is one of my favorite lines, right, from A Course in Miracles is essentially this, that a common theology is impossible. Right? But a common experience is not only possible, but necessary. And so there are all these belief systems out there, right? And the whole idea is like what is it that points us toward a shared experience? And the foundation of the work I do, that I hope I do, is about pointing us toward a common experience of love, of unity, of wholeness, and of oneness. That is like my aspiration. And so today I'm excited to share just one little glimpse into sort of the broader like work that I'm doing. I do have slides that I'll be sharing in a second, but I do want to just start by saying a few words about myself first, an introduction. I always think it's important, like there's a humanness when we enter a space that like, it's not just about the work I do, it's like a little bit about my background, who I am. And I think this relates to this notion of our love story or evolving our love story. And so just like bare bones outline, I was born in Vietnam. I came to the United States as a political refugee. I grew up in a multi-generational family, grandparents in the house, 5 kids. Vietnamese was my first language. I grew up in Southern California at a time when people from the Vietnam War weren't exactly welcome here in the United States, right? So these were little pieces about my background, excuse me. And then I studied philosophy in undergrad. I was always a seeker, you know, but there was a confusion about like this question about the meaning of life and why are we here? You know, I was born essentially in a war. And so there's this path that feels very core to my own life, like my lived life, around the gap between moving from warring to loving, moving from surviving to thriving. And I share that because that deeply informs my work and my life here today. So philosophy undergrad, as Reverend Clare shared, went to Stanford Law School. While in law school, I had a very irrational call to ministry, which is the reason I dropped everything. It's not really rational, right? Dropped everything and went to the Midwest to seminary, which is where I am based now. So I am here in Kansas City, Missouri, where one of the very few Asians, you know, in existence here in the entire city. So this is some of the framework of my life. I tell this story now in a certain way, and I want to say that when I came to the Enneagram, one of the primary things I came to understand is, wow, Nhien, the Enneagram, like there are facts about our lives, but the Enneagram helps us to name how we tie or weave those facts together into the story that we tell about our lives. And so the Enneagram like helps to name like this narrative that I have, and not always the conscious narrative. And only recently owning that I identify as a sexual 3 or a transmitting 3, I didn't realize that, you know, while it's appropriate in a forum like this for me to share my credentials, that in very inappropriate personal forums, I spent most of my life leading with my resume. Like I didn't know that. Like I didn't know that's the way I reported my story, a story of what I had accomplished and a story of what I had overcome. So I want to set that as a framework for, oh, okay, so I started to then see the Enneagram as like these 9 more than 9, you know, if we count the subtypes, like worldviews, 9 ways we inhabit like a story. And so this idea that we have these facts that happen, we have our history, but how we weave that history together to make meaning out of it creates delineates our lives in a way that actually limits it. So the way that I hold the Enneagram is, you know, there's this spaciousness about who we are, right? There's a dynamism to our wholeness. And I really like to focus on the circle as representing our innate wholeness, like the dynamism of who we are. And the Enneagram point as representing, you know, one way in which we habituate, right? Emotionally and mentally. And one way in which we get locked in to a certain perspective on life. And so recognizing that as a basic narrative, one way I started to teach the Enneagram is to be like, well, what's your story, right? Like basically, what's your story? And so what's your love story became a subset of that. Because as I was doing work, I was like, one of the foundations for people even doing inner work in the Enneagram is actually embracing like our own lovability and our worth, like to do that work. And so honing in and focusing in on our barriers to love. I'll quote A Course in Miracles again, which says essentially that, you know, our task is not to seek for love. Again, from a unity perspective, the belief and my personal belief is that we're made of love, that love is the essence of our being. So our task is not to seek for love, says A Course in Miracles. Rather, it's to find and remove all the barriers that we have to it. And so that's the basic framework, which I want to share with you today. And so with that, I'd like to launch into sharing my screen. And as Danielle and Rev Clare warned me, this group is prone to, oops, let me see what I just did here. Stop share, is prone to jump in at any time. And I definitely welcome that. So feel free to pop in. I am realizing something just happened with my screen here. I apologize. Here we go. Okay. Do you see? There we go. Evolving your love story. So that's the focus of today's chat. So something, you know, something I wrote one morning: love is powerful. It can inspire us to move mountains and cross oceans. Love can take us to the heights of human ecstasy. And sometimes it seems love abandons us in valleys of despair. Love can be confusing, heartbreaking, elusive, and bewildering. Love can be like a poem we simply cannot comprehend, or a story that appears to be written solely for other people. I say that as a framework because for me, you know, when I was in college, I did professional tutoring and I tutored in math, not English. And what was interesting is math was my worst subject when I was in high school, right? And I feel this way about like my desire to teach about love now. I feel like I was a good tutor in math because I struggled with it because of the ways like I didn't quite understand it. I thought I didn't have, you know, with love, I didn't have the memo. With math, I think what made me a good teacher of it is my empathy for the ways we struggled with it. The same thing with love. And so the question I want to invite you to join me in here today is to ask yourself, what's your love story? If you've ever asked it before, I'd love for you to ask it of yourself again, just here in this moment. And by that, I mean, if you were to fill in the blank, love is, like, truthfully, based on like how you live your life, what would you say there? What's your story about love? And I want to share just a few words about my love story historically. when I first pondered this, I realized, oh, historically, I would say that love is sacrifice, that love is hard work, that love is maybe even not available to me. Like that was my historic story, and I might even say that love is, I mean, if we want to be really open here, in the past, love is desirability, like around sexuality. Like I had a lot of confusion growing up that when people desired me, that meant that they loved me, right? So those were some of the things that I would have historically written about my love story. I would also say that for me, my story about love is that it's not, quote, God-given, right? I mean, even though I believe it intellectually, if I look at how I've lived my life, it's not God-given. I have to earn it. I have to work to earn love. I have to add value to someone's life before I can feel lovable. Those were my historic love stories. When I began to name them, and as I'll share in a little bit as I apply the Enneagram to this, as I began to name those, I could see these threads of how, yeah, the transmitting or sexual 3 could really like be seen in this historically. And as I became willing to open to a space of transformation, to open to a new story, which is what I think fundamentally inner and Enneagram work is about, I started to own that while love is unconditional, love is available to everyone equally. My story about love is that my being is lovable, that I am worthy in this moment. Those were like, if I were to open up my heart and like dream my biggest love story, these were the things that started to unfold for me. And these are the things that I feel deeply, deeply grateful that I've begun to live into, to be able to understand that I'm lovable, even if I fail, right? That I'm lovable, even when I feel ugly, both inside and outside. These are treasures that I've experienced in my own evolution, especially with the Enneagram. And so as I share some of my personal like love stories, I definitely invite you in this moment to interact with this, to consider, what comes up for you. I mean, what's your real love story? And what is the one that you're wanting to open up to as well? What are you wanting to evolve in your love story, right? So what is your love story? And take a moment right now. Actually, I'd like for us to just take a few seconds to pause here. You might even put your hand on your heart to help sort of activate that space. Love is love hard, right? What is it really? And then what's the love story that you're beginning to open up to? Maybe you're beginning to learn that you don't have to give in order to receive love, right? Maybe you're learning that love is a sort of, that there's a steadfastness to love. That love involves vulnerability, that love isn't just about power. Just take that moment to consider. And if you're feeling brave and you want to share any of this, I really encourage you to share it in chat, or we'll have time here at the end of this. So as I shared my story, it strikes me that years ago, before I found the Enneagram, now realizing, this 3-ness, that I didn't want anyone to know anything about me that felt inferior or weak, anything that felt like I was less than. Like somehow if someone knew something negative about me, that, I was like, that I couldn't love, that I didn't think I was able to, that then I would become unlovable, right? And so much of learning to own my worth has been being able to also own my story so that I can begin to transcend it. And that's what I really believe, whether it's about owning your type story or owning your type story about love. And so for Brene Brown, owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experiences that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. Brene Brown. So again, this is, I should have shared earlier that Evolving Your Love Story was a day-long retreat I did at this castle back just in May in Copenhagen, Denmark. And so I'm condensing the material quite a bit to fit into this sort of 20-30 minute slot here. So owning your story is the beginning. And I don't like to start anything with the Enneagram. And the reason for this is I want to start with the actual territory, which is you, the inner terrain of your life, recognizing that I do see the Enneagram as a map of consciousness, a map of our inner world, a map of our relationality. But it's so important to reiterate that the map is not the territory. And I love this. It's just, from Google, essentially. What is a map? A map is not an objective depiction of reality. It's a symbolic interpretation of place and highlights the relationships between elements in space, either perceived or actual. It reflects choices, biases, and agendas of the map maker. When you see or make a map, think critically about it. What does the map show? What does it omit and why? The practice of cartography is as much about removing things as depicting them. A map does not and cannot represent everything in the place. Things must be omitted, simplified, etc., for the map to make sense. This is how a map achieves clarity and usefulness. It strips away details of the world so that the map's purpose shines through. So important. So when we think about the Enneagram as a map, and we recognize that, like for me, what's so helpful about it is that remembrance that I've omitted things. Like my map excludes aspects of of love, of my humanity. And as soon as I recognize that, though, I begin to open to the fact that, like what seems like the reality, whether it's the reality of life or the reality of like love in my life, I'm willing now to be open to the fact that this internal map I have based on my type doesn't show me all of love, all of life. So recollecting this metaphor notion helps me to become open, like open-hearted with a beginner's mind about what I don't know, what I can't see yet about love. And again, feel free to unmute if you feel called to share at any time. So what I'll do here is simply touch so briefly on some themes I've seen over the years. I've been studying the Enneagram since 2002 and teaching it since about 2007. And so over the years, especially applying it in ministry, these are just some overarching themes I've seen for individuals of the 9 different types regarding love. That in the evolution of love, I see 8s move from this notion of like tough love to tender love. 9s moving from self-abandoning love, love that merges, to unique love, like where the specialness of your unique qualities in your 9ness are actually up front, show up. 1s move from corrective love to loving what is. 2s move from giving for love to actually receiving love. 3s move from earning love or trying to just being beloved innately. 4s move from longing for love to belonging to love. 5s move from compartmentalized love to embodied, robust love. 6s move from testing love to faith in love. And 7s move from fickle love to present love. Fickle flight.
Nhien, so beautiful. And, you know, I just want to pause here for a second. And also just ask everyone would you name this as true for you? And maybe in the chat say, you know, what is true for you here? And I love that you did this, because when you first led us in the practice of what would you say love is, because of the week I've had in working with someone that I love deeply and they're going through hard stuff. When you said love is, the first thing I heard is love is hard work. And then I was able to drop it down into that was surface. But what was more true is this deep connection. Like this hard work has happened this week because of this deep connection with this person. So and then you naming it in this way. So those are different words, but they are the exact experience that I had when you first invited us to that practice. So I wonder, you all, if you could put a little, in the chat, say, yeah, those words, they're significant for me, or and they lead me to something else that are words that are more true of you. It's beautiful. Thank you, Nhien.
Yeah, thank you. I'm skimming over some of the comments now, and I welcome you, Rev Clare, or others to read them aloud into the space as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Phaedra just said, this feels true for me, but can you say more about how you are defining compartmentalized love? And Phaedra is an Enneagram 5. She leads with 5. She's got plenty of 2 and 8 going on, but she leads with 5.
Wow. Well, I would love to do so. And in fact, I have slides that will support me in answering that question. So I'm going to just hold off on that for a sec, because that will be in one of my slides to support that. So great question.
Leave it to a 5.
Yes.
And a professor.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, well, I can, let's do them in order. I'd love to do that. If we want to just continue, and then again, anyone can chime in at any time, in the midst of that. But I thought I'd give you the scoop now here, and I think we can kind of mingle the Q&A time with this time perhaps, but I'd love to go through all 9 numbers. And so let's start with the body types. So you can see that what we wrote in that the evolving love Enneagram is up here. So since you've already seen that, I'm going to just share what's down here. So one of the things I've learned is when we try in setting the Enneagram, like there is a desire, I mean, like in me for sure, to be like, I'll just tell you how it is. Like let's get something concrete on the table here. Let's teach something about it. But what I found is there's something so much more humbling but honest about not knowing what emerges for each type or each number. And instead of learning to ask good questions. And so for me, the journey of moving into a different kind of love is fundamentally about asking good questions of ourselves and of those, we might spiritually companion or coach. And so I'd invite those who identify as type 8, I mean, these could always be good for everyone, right? In the move from tough love to tender love, how are you armored against love? Right? And many 8s, when they're newer to the journey, don't even know that they're armored, right? This is just how I live. But how are you armored against love? And then what might you do to nurture your tender heart? Right? Because we know your heart is tender. So what might you do to nurture that? 9s, how do you self-abandon in your relationships? One of the things I found is if you can enumerate them, if you can list them, because that whole notion that like part of what enables the 9's type structure to continue is that it stays in vagueness. So by listing these things, it's helpful. And then what unique qualities do you bring to love? Really understanding that the things that make you different actually add to love, right? Now, those aren't things to shut down, right? Whereas, 9s usually, it's sort of like anything that's different from my partner or different from the people I want to ally with, right? I set aside, right? I abandon. So 1s, how is correction an implied rejection of yourself or another? Most 1s enter the journey thinking, I'm correcting out of love, but how does it impliedly reject the other? And how does comprehending that, well, reject another or myself, right? Like, how does comprehending that open me to something more full and whole in my view of loving another? And then asking the question, what is lovable about people's flaws, your own or others? What is lovable about flaws? These questions I found help people to open into the truth of their own story, which is unique to each. And when we get to 5, I'll definitely spend a little more time on that. But for the 2, how is loving someone different from helping them? A 2 of average help, help doesn't know the difference, right? What do you mean? Like, love and helping are kind of the same. There's something so intimately related. So to parse that out, and what are specific ways you could practice receiving more? That specificity, again, is super important. Practice receiving. And then for 3s, how do you try to earn love? Like, even for me, like, I have some general notion that that's true, but when I get more specific, then there are ways then I can let go of, right? Because I was like, oh, in that way, oh, maybe today I'll release that efforting so that I can drop into the knowing that I am beloved. What specific things would you say or do if you knew you were already worthy and loved? So this notion of like coming from wholeness, not trying to earn it through what I do, but what specific things would you say or do if you already knew? How would you show up? Like, what would you choose differently? For 4s who often have this, underlying fear of abandonment and not recognizing, well, how do you abandon love? And then what might you do to express love? So this is like from the inside out, from your own depths, right? Like, so not just being mirrored like in your truth, but coming from the inside in order to overflow into the world, to express love. And now here, 5, I want to touch on compartmentalized love. I'm glad to hear that just sort of resonated, but to parse it out, one of the things I've experienced in 5s is there is something to where, okay, well, these are my work people, these are my home people, like they're like these categories, right? And even categories for how I love that doesn't allow for an organic expression of love. So it's almost more like, how should I love in this space becomes it, and those rules within, this category, whether you belong in the certain category, actually end up limiting sort of that more. I love the word robust for the 5 moving into a strong 8, right? Like embodied love. And so I'm happy to follow up if that's still unclear there. But so related to compartmentalizing, how do you limit love? Like, there's a reservation of love, right? And just recognizing it, because again, most of what our type does is habitual and unconscious. And so when we make the unconscious conscious, we have more mastery over it, right? We have more choice. And so what might you do to act more from love? And that question is designed to shift into move from the spirit of scarcity into a spirit of generosity. So to act more from love, to be proactive about it, and also to take action. That's what that question is designed to do. What might you do to act more from love? So moving, yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I wanted to ask Phaedra, would you like to speak to that, or would you like to stay silent?
No, this is very helpful. And I was just thinking about a conversation I was having with my spiritual director about the idea of inhabiting. And so this resonates in terms of the evolution that you're talking about. Like, really, this gives different language to ways in which I've seen movement in myself. But also it's helpful framing to think about how to notice what's happening and when it's not happening, when I'm moving back into a space of compartmentalizing or limiting. So thank you.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. Yeah. Powerful. I mean, you really named it there, that it is the naming of these things in very specific words that I intentionally used in the hopes that, like, it's like you could see the little yellow flag of the warning sign of like, oh, you're going to the limitation, like that it becomes an internal structure, and yet it doesn't give the answer, right? Like, how do you limit love? Ideally opens us up to not limiting it in the moment, but I'm not going to describe that. That's bigger than anything that I could teach, right? Yeah. So beautiful. So for 6, moving into 6, how do you unroot the ground of love? The very thing you say you want the most, the stability, right? The testing, the questioning. And what might you do to take a leap of faith in love, right? And that leap, framing it like that deliberately, because it's not like you're never gonna like have enough confidence. You're never gonna be sure, right? But how do you take a leap of faith? And then the 7, how do you flee from love? And what can you be more present to in the context of your relationships today? What can you be more present to? Like, in the context of your relationships today, not what it's not the next thing. That's the thing about 7. It's like moving. Oh yeah, I'm really hopeful. I'm optimistic. It's going to be good. What about it being good right now? What about the love being here right now? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I can go back a slide here. Yeah.
So we have Debbie asking, can you please say more about what unroot the ground of love means?
Yeah. So it's very related to the evolving love Enneagram, which is that testing love piece. So what I've seen often where the 6s I know can sabotage the connection, like, so there's connection already. And it's almost like the continual need to check and test, to place doubt in, can actually damage that connection. So in that way, I watched 6s damage the very framework that's like already there, by an often unconscious, maybe compulsive need to check and test. And so as you move into a place of wholeness within your being, and I definitely identify with the holy ideas and the virtue of the type, which is like holy faith, right? And like this holy strength that allows you to kind of find your center within yourself, and to know that what you experience is trustworthy. Then you're going to need to test it outside yourself less, and the irony is you will have the love more as a result. I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, you have Barbara saying, I am unfortunately familiar with testing relentlessly. And then it almost plants the seed in the other's mind to leave. It's just that the basic fear pattern of the 6 comes up either way.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for sharing that. You know, it's definitely like you definitely aren't alone, like, you know, just by seeing this, like, but there is something to where, to me, the work of opening to love is integral or intimate related to our own inner work, right? Like, and so you can see how that piece, but like the first piece is knowing that we do it, right? The first piece is knowing that we do it. And then the second piece is maybe bringing some presence to the moments that we're doing it. And then like that presence, I think, like there's this compassionate witnessing of myself in this moment that then enables me to like have a different choice, you know? So, but in my experience, for the most part, we start witnessing and we still do the very thing that we don't want to do, right? Like, you know, but by bringing witnessing presence to that, like the moment of it, something begins to shift over time, and bringing compassion to ourselves, even in the midst of it. Yeah. Yeah. But thank you for sharing that, Barbara.
Yeah.
Anyone
Yeah.
else?
And there's a couple more responses, and I'll just say, Danielle, do you want to unmute yourself and respond?
Mhm. And actually,
Yeah, I just wanted to say, for me, the type 1's journey from correcting love to loving what is, that really landed for me because I resist and correct, out of love. And then when I surrender, that serenity, that virtuous serenity takes over, and I begin to just accept and love what is without the need to reform or correct. And so that was kind of liberating for me, because I'm in a surrendered place now, and it's less energetically expensive. So I just want to say that landed, and that is more sustainable to be in that space of loving what is. So thank you.
wow.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then Lori, do you feel comfortable on unmuting? If not, I can read what you wrote, but Lori said something about anger being welcome.
Mm.
Yeah, I am happy to share. I'm an 8. Excuse me, I'm an 8 if that didn't give it away. And I find that when I love the anger, that always comes first. It just does, right? And I've learned to say, okay, that's injustice, right? The anger is towards an injustice that's happened. So when I can welcome that, that tends to open my heart. So that repressed center comes forward because I've loved the anger.
Oh,
So that's what I have found for me. So this does resonate. So thank you. It's beautiful.
thank you so much. What a beautiful.
And Art, would you like to unmute yourself and say what you wrote in the chat? And if not, you can always shake your head no.
Oh, you know I'm going to talk, right?
We love you. We
Yeah.
love your talking.
For me, it's been difficult throughout life. I use the word to feel love. Even when I'm making practical attempts to love people and say that I love people or do something to love, there's been this block in the sense that I can't feel it. So the self-condemnation is the inner critic voice all these years has been, you don't know how to love anybody, you don't love anybody. So it's both blocked it coming in, I can't feel it, and it makes me, the inner critic says, yeah, you, after all your work, you still don't know how to love, you really don't love anybody. Yeah. So
and Art is an Enneagram-Style 7, and would say that maybe you've dismissed your 4. Is that right, Art?
Well, it's, Claire, I've taken the training 3 times, I think, for you guys, and I'm still working on the 1-4. Definitely, I mean, I guess you would say it's obviously heart space, but I think there's something about the 1 and the groundedness there, the goodness of 1, integrity in the body, that may have something to do with this as well, but I'm not sure I can define it either space. But I mean, if you go with the caricature in Enneagram of the 7, that it's a repressed heart space and it had to be elevated, it makes sense to me. In recovery, the first thing they did in my inventory was try to get me to feel my feelings, to go back and feel the feeling. So it all makes sense. All that makes sense. But I'm wondering if there's not also something in relationship, when I say feel, about the groundedness of that, the solidness of that 7s are often seeking. They don't feel solid or complete. So not sure. Yeah. The good news is most of the people I know actually say I'm much better at loving. So I'm just going to have to trust that I can't feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I happen to know there's another 7 here, just like hanging on your every word. I can see her. So, but assuming you are 7, since I don't know for sure, that I really connect with the notion of like the repressed heart center for the 7, but also this way that the 7 flees from love. And I would say that there's something to where, like, I like to say that 7s, people say 7s are so like optimistic. I'm like, but they're optimistic, but that has to do with the future, but not about the present moment. Like the present moment has nothing. I want to, like, let's think about the next moment. And so the dropping in is about a willingness to trust this moment and to drop in and down. And I think that when we're apart from ourselves, when we're up there in the head, it's like a far fall down. And the first thing that happens in the inner life of the 7 is emptiness. And as soon as you meet that barren desert, you're like, let's think about amusement parks instead, and so you jump back up, when instead, if you just drop down and you bear the barrenness of that, it's all there already.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would also say perhaps as a sexual dominant 7, I'm looking for double intensity anyway. So that may have something to do with it as well. And then the idea of, as you said, to be present in your slide, again, I would say for me, that almost takes me back into the body, because in one sense, the body is present always. So, so anyway, hope that helps, but still on a jury.
Thank you so much, Art, for always being willing to share yourself so that we can see ourselves as well. Your personal journey is also very universal. And so, friends, I want to say thank you. We're at the top of the hour, and Sean Palmer is on this call. I don't know if you want to give us your video or not. You don't have to. I didn't tell you that we were going to do this, but Sean is our guest next month. He's written the book Speaking by Number. And so I don't know, Sean, if you want to say hi to everybody or not, you don't have to. But he will be our guest next month, the 3rd Wednesday in August. So you're not going to want to miss that. Every time we get to the top of the hour, I think maybe we should do a 90-minute thing, Danielle. I don't know what you think, but.
Oh man, it goes by so fast. And I want to say, one of the things that I neglected to mention at the beginning is that we now have an Instagram page as well, thanks to our lovely Lindsay. And so the links to all of the ways that you can follow us and expand with us are in the chat, as well as our Instagram page. So I agree with you, Claire. There's so many things to cover, and I just want to sit at Nhien's feet and learn some more. So yeah, we might have to rethink this time frame.
Right. And of course, we have the link there for you for Nhien's website, so that you can follow what she's doing in the world, and who knows what could happen from here. We really do appreciate if you would connect with us on social media. We don't have a big page yet on Instagram, so we'd love to build it with you. If you could like it, comment on it, share it. Same thing with Facebook, so that who knows what could happen with us if we all participate in significant ways. There's people like Diana who've been with us forever, and then there are brand new ones on the call today, and we'd love to get to know you and see how we can share the goodness of the Enneagram together. So from Enneagram Midday Cafe, we say, take a breath And however you'd like to give a thank you to Nhien for what she's given to us today. And if you'd like to find another name on the call to just offer some kind of a blessing to them, whether you just hold them in the silence, however you'd like to do that. We know that, you know, I would say my creator is much bigger than this time and space between us. And so I do bless you and pray that you'll be kept and that you'll feel the face of love shining upon you the rest of this week and month.
Thank you.
Thank you.